Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 18th of May, comes to you from London. And we've got a big upside potential on the energy space again today, with the Middle East crisis showing no signs of abating and potentially getting worse with the latest comments from Trump. Are we going to move to a hot war? But we've got these big upside targets for crude oil. And if we look at the 60-minute chart, you can see here, again, the big question is, can we break $115? So we've gone out with our report to clients this morning, looking at European gas prices. There, look at that, multiple upside targets, 5 upside targets met there. And if we look at UK gas prices, which is going to have a big impact on inflation in the UK, they've gone from 100 pence per therm to touching 130 pence per therm, a clear 30% increase just in the last couple of weeks. This is going to be inflationary, and that's feeding through to power prices. And I know a lot of people won't be looking at power prices in the UK, but again, upside potential here. And so energy bills are going to go higher in the UK with these moves in wholesale markets. Now, looking at the dollar, we are still in this big sideways range, so no great big changes there. Sterling has improved a little bit this morning, but we are sinking below the cloud there on the daily chart. If we activate that downside target and expect more political turmoil with everything that's going on in the UK, will have an effect on sterling. Looking at Bitcoin, we're down 1.6%. Still holding that previous low point, but if we look at the 60-minute chart, you can see we are bearish below the cloud there. So maybe this downside target will come back into the fore. It certainly will if we break 65,000, which was the really significant level previously. Now, US markets were hit on Friday. If we look at the weekly chart of the Nasdaq, one thing that was just showing up last week was a little bit of a doji there, and that was something we highlighted when we did our LSEG seminar on Friday. You can find this on the resources section of the Updater website, and we did a full roundup of markets there and covered some key things. All of these previous sessions are all there for you to watch. So there's lots of free training resources there. But interestingly, that weekly chart may be just running out of steam there. Looking at the futures today, well, the Nasdaq future is down, with the S&P futures down 0.4% and the Nasdaq future down 0.2%. So it looks like we're going to have another bearish day. The UK FTSE is actually up. The future is up. And that is driven largely by BP and Shell, the majors there, having an impact on the index. So the weighting of those big companies is just holding us a little bit higher. But on the whole, we are seeing weaker markets in Europe. The DAX down as well, and just in this range at the moment. So that's really quite key. In Asia, we saw some pretty big moves. The Sensex still looking pretty bearish there. Japan was down another 1%, having just made a new high, not managing to hold that high and falling away. And the Aussie market was hit particularly hard, down nearly 1.5%. So that is looking bearish there below the cloud. Go to the 60-minute chart. There are your downside targets. You can't ignore those. This data all coming from LSEG, of course, but you can run the same data through Metastock Zenith. Their end-of-day package, very cost-effective, and you can configure all the data services that you want into Updata, so the choice is yours. And some of those are free broker services, etc. But these targets are there. You can't ignore them. And so that is a factor for the Aussie market. And if we look at bonds, this has been the big concern. You'll know that I keep talking about the Japanese bond market, most indebted country in the world. That did touch 2.8%. So that is really significant. Having met those targets now, there was 2.79. That was met. So on the short-term chart, this is really a big worry. The most indebted nation in the world, 250% GDP to debt ratio, and the biggest buyers, the biggest foreign buyers of US Treasuries, and that's going to be an impact as well. Japan is now selling down on US Treasuries in a need to fund their own debt, and so we are seeing an impact there with yields in the US now pushing higher as well. We are seeing a little bit of respite today on the UK gilts, but look at that, we have touched 5.2% on the 10-year, and on the 30-year we are seeing 28-year highs, nudging towards 6%. So this is really having a significant impact there. Now the other market that's really quite interesting this morning in gilts is in bond yields is the German market. That's touched 3.2%. So we are seeing effects there, and Italy also heading higher this morning as well. So this is something that we're seeing across the board. It's good. It's the big worry for markets. So looking also at gold, that is starting to look a little bit stronger this morning. We are waiting to see if we activate this downside target. It will turn from orange to red if we do. But if we look at the 60-minute chart, we do have downside targets, which kind of suggests we might well activate that target. We are in a sort of sell everything environment in terms of these big assets, and so that is having a bit of an impact. And we're seeing silver also really falling off quite heavily this last couple of days. Downside targets there as well, sinking lower. The tech majors in the US, where you saw Apple, they were up on Friday, so that was what was breaking the mold, holding that new high, pushing to the targets. But we did see quite a few stocks falling. Amazon had met their target given last April, and there's no new targets. We have to have a pullback and then a new thrust to produce that. And you can see on the 60-minute chart, we have got a little bit of downside there. Nvidia gave up quite a lot. That was down 4%, but their target is activated. And Tesla gave up quite a bit of their recent gains, down 4% as well. If we look at the Dow 30, most of the underperformers like Salesforce and Microsoft, they had better days, but they have really been in clear downtrends. Chevron, of course, oil major, looking stronger. So that's been a bit better. Nvidia is the worst performer in the Dow 30. The Nasdaq, we saw some pretty big sell-offs here. Micron, Intel, all giving up gains that they've made recently. And so we're seeing here, waiting to see if that chart, we activate the downside target. The 60-minute gives us a clue. Not a great clue. We've got targets in either directions. Looking at the UK market this morning, this one I've just kept up is Hiscox. This had good upside targets back in January at around 1400. They were probably a bit hard to believe then, but we broke out and ran higher, and so that's really been quite interesting. And if we look at BP and Shell, of course, they're pushing higher, so that's been quite strong as well. But the real risk at the moment, which not a lot of private investors will be watching, is these bond markets. And I'm particularly interested to see this German bond this morning pushing higher. Notice that consolidation phase. If we look at the weekly chart, big move in 2022, sideways move. Those of you who've done my training will know the significance of that. If you want to look at that, you can go back to patterns and look at the meaning of that pattern. That is going to be very significant for Europe, that break higher on that weekly chart. That's it for today. Keep an eye on your price targets. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.